time for...
There are places I remember in my life. I love you more.
And today we're hearing the life story of Trevor Weeks. Trevor is from Uckfield and runs the East Sussex Wildlife Rescue and Ambulance Service. It's interesting, Trevor, because I didn't know this about you, but you started off as a computer programmer. I mean, you couldn't get two more different careers, could you really?
No, not really. Although it does come in useful for doing work around the centre and getting the computer system up.
Yeah, I suppose, all the admin, yeah. But you didn't really enjoy your time as a computer programmer, did you? It's fair to say.
Not really, no. It's it was long hours. Mind you, that's no different to what I'm doing now. But what I'm doing now is just so much more worthwhile.
Yeah, and you're getting more out of it, so you don't mind the long hours so much. Now, you were born in Eastbourne, and I understand you lived mainly sort of in the Helsham area growing up. Is that right?
Yeah, definitely. Helsham was sort of my hometown, really, as a fact. But I've lived both Peacehaven, Seaford, and a couple of other places locally for short periods of time. And then the last 5-6 years I've been based in Uckfield, living in Uckfield.
So as a child, did you have this great love of animals?
Definitely. We lived on the edge of Helsham, and the good thing about living on the edge of any town is you get the benefits of being close to the countryside and close to the town. And we were always encouraged by our parents to go out and play in the woods and explore. And I think that's where my love for the countryside has really come from.
I know you credit your mum as well with really setting you on this path.
Yeah, my mum and I had a bit of a rough past, to be honest. But
in what way?
I think it was that typical sort of teenage phase where, you sort of rebel against the family and all those sorts of usual family problems. Yeah. But my mum had her own problems, which she was trying to deal with health-wise, and she eventually developed celiac disease. Okay. And I think she found that very frustrating to deal with, and I think she sort of took some of that out on us to a degree, and I don't think we helped her really. I don't think we understood the situation as children that well. And I'm just glad that before she passed away, we were able to get a nice close bond together, and sort of rebuild those bridges that had been damaged.
But I know you went through a tough time though after she passed away.
Definitely, yeah. It was a very hard time for me. I think it was a hard time for the whole family. Yeah, I don't think anyone expected it. She was only 47 when she died.
So young.
And no one expected it. And it did come as a bit of a shock, even right at the very end. But she always had a passion for animals. We always had animals around the house. And I think it's my mum that really pushed me down that road. And I think she always wanted me to find a niche, an area that I loved and I enjoyed, and she always pushed us to explore those avenues, and I'm just so grateful that she pushed me down this route.
Yeah. I also know that you've been, open about the fact that you had counselling after your mother passed away. Did you find that helped?
Definitely, yeah.
Because counselling's a funny one, isn't it? Some people really sort of poo-poo the whole idea, don't they? Oh, why do you need to talk to someone else? You've got friends and family, and yet other people, we've discussed it on the show before, say, actually, I don't know where I would have been without counselling.
I think I didn't really want to burden anyone within the family, or with my problems, I suppose.
Sometimes it's easier to talk to someone you don't know.
Exactly, and I think it was difficult. I think because of the problems that existed between my mum and I think I needed that outside support. Yeah. I think, and I'm so glad I did it, to be honest, because I'm a completely different person now. I'm a much stronger, much more positive person as a result of going through that. And Open Door Youth Counselling in Eastbourne that sort of got me through that phase did a fantastic job. Today I am so grateful for making me the person that I am now, because I don't think I would be doing my voluntary work still, even now, with RAS, if it wasn't for all the events that have gone through my younger years.
So I mentioned before that you trained as a computer programmer, and so you were working in London for a while, very long hours, you say, but then you lost your job, computer programming. due to a back injury. So is that something that still troubles you? Or?
Yeah, I do. I have problems even now. I can't sit at a desk for long periods of time without having problems with my back, and I have to go and get my back sorted every now and again to sort of free it up and stop it from locking. But yes, I ended up with paramedics having to be called to get me out of my car because I couldn't bend. I was completely seized and couldn't bend my back. I was off work for well over 6 months, having problems with it constantly locking, and as a result, they terminated my contract.
Right. Okay. So what did you do for money at that time?
Well, basically, I was on.
Voluntary work's great, but it isn't going to pay the bills, is it, Trevor?
No, it doesn't. Strangely enough. Well, all the time, I was off ill. I was on statutory sick pay, basically. So, and then sort of trying to claim income support, and really going down that route. My doctor encouraged me to sort of continue with my voluntary work because it meant I was up and I was moving around, and I therefore, and I wasn't sort of sat at a desk, in a fixed position, for long periods of time. So yeah, he actually encouraged me to continue my voluntary work, and I think by doing that and various exercises and physiotherapy, it sort of got it back to a decent strength. But again, I had a lot of support, luckily, from friends and family, girlfriends at the time, who were very supportive and sort of really kept me going through that period.
Because I know at one point you were just kind of living on bread, and that was about it.
Literally, yes. I think it did get to the point where I was literally just eating sort of bread and butter and trying to keep myself going. And bless him, Alan Knight, who's the chief executive of International Animal Rescue. Basically, I've known him for quite a few years now. He basically took pity on me and actually offered me a part-time job working for their charity, which I was extremely grateful for him for doing, to be honest, because it allowed me the flexibility of continuing to do my voluntary work but earning some money at the same time.
So what's the situation now? What do you do now to earn money?
I'm actually now funded by International Animal Rescue to work for 21 hours a week for East Sussex Wildlife Rescue.
Okay.
And the rest of my time is basically voluntary. And Sussex Horse Rescue, I live in one of their flats at the moment, and they've been very kind to me in allowing me, sort of a discounted rent, because I've helped them out with various rescues in the past, and I can just about survive. The money I get from working for RAS just about covers the bills, and I can just about survive. And Kathy, my rather suffering partner.
Boy, she must be one understanding lady.
She certainly is.
Yeah.
But she's very supportive and helps me out as well.
So how many hours do you reckon you put in a week then?
In the last 7 days, I've done over 85 hours.
Wow, you really love animals, don't you? That is an understatement.
Someone's got to do it at the end of the day. And it's the problem with animals. It's not the sort of thing that you can say, oh, well, I'll put an hour in here, I'll put an hour in there.
Yeah, it's something like that.
You've got to put a commitment in, and if that means you've got to get up through the night in order to feed something or to rush out and rescue it, then you've got to put in that sort of commitment.
So are you kind of on call all the time? So your mobile phone could ring now, and you would have to dash off?
Yes, literally. I have got 2 other people on call with me today.
Right.
And they're both out and about on jobs at the moment.
Okay. Let's find out what's happening on the roads, and then we'll hear more from Trevor Weeks. You join me this afternoon in conversation with Trevor Weeks from the East Sussex Wildlife Rescue and Ambulance Service. So tell us then about some of your most memorable rescues then, ones you'll never forget.
Ones I'll never forget. Well, the one that always sticks in my mind because it was such a difficult rescue was working with British Divers Marine Life Rescue, who up until last summer I worked as their national coordinator, and we had to assess and deal with a bottlenose dolphin that had swum into harbour up in Cumbria. And we had the very difficult job of monitoring and observing the animal round the clock to find out, to study its behavioural patterns, whether it was feeding, checking its health on a daily basis, and making that final decision that it couldn't stay there and that it had to physically be removed. was a very difficult decision because a lot of the local residents up there did not want it removed because it was attracting so many tourists to the town. And we had tried several attempts at encouraging it out and trying to sort of coax it out or sort of push it out of the harbour, but it just would not cross those lock gates. And this was a real struggle for us. And after 2.5 weeks of being there, we ended up having to literally drain the entire marina at low tide and literally sort of physically get in there, catch the dolphin and crane it out onto the inshore rescue boat scoop stretcher, which then did a beach launch, and literally within 3 minutes we had about 8 metres of water underneath us and were able to release it into the water. And that whole rescue from the point of capture to the point of release took less than 10 minutes.
But all of that planning beforehand.
A lot of planning there, but it was a very frustrating rescue because we even had local residents that were sending us death threats.
Are you kidding me?
Because they said if you kill that animal, your life won't be worth living.
Right. No pressure then.
No pressure, no. So we actually ended up with police presence during the rescue to protect us in case anything went wrong.
Yeah. And you have almost been killed during a rescue. I mean, tell us about the adder.
This always comes back to haunt me, this one. And I will stress that this was a rescue situation, so this isn't something that members of the public should really be worried about. But I was called just over a year ago to Lewis to an adder, or a couple of adders that had been caught in some pea netting on an allotment. And they're already very wound up because they'd been cut free, and I was assessing them for a ligature wound, and unfortunately I got bitten. It was my own fault. I should have, I was losing my grip. I should have put them back into their box and re-caught them, but I didn't. I was trying to cut corners, and hey presto, I suffered the consequences.
Wow, so what happened?
Well, I got bitten twice in very quick succession. The first bite was not venomous, but the second bite was. And I got the full force of its venom, and literally, I didn't think anything of it initially, and then sort of drove up to the community hospital at Lewis and popped into there. And within 15 minutes I'd collapsed on the floor. I ended up with, I think it was about 4 or 5 paramedics working on me at the hospital, got rushed down to Brighton, was given antivenom, and I was in resus for 4.5 hours.
So it could have been really serious. It could have gone the other way.
My girlfriend was told by the doctors, was warned by the doctors that I may not survive because it was a venomous reaction rather than just an anaphylactic reaction. Although I think the last time someone actually died of such a bite was back in the 1950s, I think.
Right.
But the quick acting staff at the hospital and at Brighton did a fantastic job, and I was fine, luckily.
Going back to your very understanding girlfriend, at that point, did she not say, Trevor, think about the computer programming, perhaps?
She has said under no circumstances am I allowed to go out and deal with another adder,
right,
because you can only get antivenom once.
Oh, is that right? Oh, okay.
Apparently, that's what I've been told. So,
right.
Basically, I think if the adder doesn't kill me, she will.
I'd be scared of her if I were you. One of the things you often hear people say when they're talking about animal charities in particular, and the kind of work you do, and I'm sure you've come across this, people say, look, there are people dying in this world, there are people that need our help. Should we really be putting resources into animal welfare? Now, I'm guessing you would say, well, of course, but do you come up against that? Do people sometimes just look at you and be dumbfounded as to why you do what you do?
Yeah, we do all the time, to be honest. But then again, I also see the opposite as well, where people say, "Oh, why bother with humans? They get enough money." But at the same time, though, I'd like to think that there should be a balanced approach here. And I think, my philosophy has always been one of that I do this to prevent suffering. My forte, my area of expertise is with animals. If it was with humans, then I would be working with humans. Oddly enough, my brother's gone down the same sort of avenue, but he's gone down the human avenue. I've gone down the animal.
Oh, right. What does he do?
So he's now, I think he's the emergency planning officer for East or West Kent now.
Oh, okay.
So, he's works up in Kent now, so he does a fantastic job up there. But it's suffering is the issue here, and I support both other animal charities and also other children's and adult charities that deal with prevention of or the alleviation of suffering. And that's why we're here. You know, I don't do wildlife rescue from a conservation perspective. I do it to prevent suffering. I know I can make a difference here, so therefore that's why I do this. And I think that, yes, you know, human charities deserve money, animal charities deserve money. We're all living creatures at the end of the day, and I don't like to see anything suffering.
When rescues go wrong, and I guess, you know, they don't always have a happy ending, it must be tough for you not to take that home with you, to not feel disillusioned.
Yeah, oddly enough, I've been having this conversation with some of our rescuers recently, and it is a difficult thing. You know, you do harden up to dealing with, you know, the sad cases where animals don't survive, and you try your hardest to turn around and say, well, look, you know, this has actually been a success because that animal, be it, say, a road casualty badger, is no longer lying under that hedge, sick and injured, which could take days to die. At least, you know, it's gone into the vets and it's now been euthanized or passed away. But at the same time, you know, you do feel sorry for the fact that it has happened. And I think the sad thing is that, you know, sort of, I think it's about 87% of all of the animals we deal with are via man-made causes. And I think that's what makes it so upsetting and so sad, is that these things, most of these things could be avoided.
What's the biggest problem?
One of the two most common incidents we deal with are road casualties and predator attacks, as in cat or dogs attacking animals.
Right.
And you know, they can be very, very difficult to deal with. Sometimes it's minor injuries, sometimes it's, you know, really, really severe with a leg or a wing being ripped off. And you know, they can be very distressing. You know, this morning, literally before coming here, I've dealt with a baby deer up near Uckfield that was caught in stock fencing. Rear leg caught in stock fencing. Mum was still in the field as we were rescuing the baby, and it's heartbreaking to feel that we are taking that baby away from that mum. But you know, I've left Kathy, Chris and Sylvia and Sue, you know, sort of dealing with her at the moment, and they've just been into the vets and they're trying to settle the poor thing down, but it's in a lot of discomfort, a lot of pain. And you know, they're trying their hardest to sort of keep her going and prevent her from suffering.
And then if the baby pulls through, you reunite them? Or?
It's unlikely she's going to pull through quick enough to be returned to her mum.
Right.
We've only got literally 2 or 3 days in which we can reunite her to mum. And I think the wounds are just too serious for us to be able to do that. So therefore she'll probably go into our little, you know, semi-wild herd that we have.
Right.
And she'll be, you know, released into the wild still.
Yeah.
But she'll get integrated into the herd.
Right. I couldn't do what you do, Trevor, but as you say, thank goodness there is someone out there doing it. Listen, thank you so much for coming in. I really appreciate it. We're just going to take a look at the weather and travel, and then we're going to hear the song that you've chosen to play this afternoon.
Here at home, Sussex have bowled through...
BBC Sussex with Alison Ferns.
Our My Life guest this afternoon is Trevor Weeks, and all of our guests, Trevor, get to choose one song which means something to them. It's sort of like a low-budget Desert Island Discs. It's just Desert Island Disc. So what song have you chosen and why?
Well, I just thought this was very appropriate for my life, really, which is crazy. So it's Seal Crazy.